Yes, a recent poll for the BBC indicates that 1 in 4 of us here in Britain doesn't believe in global warming. That's not far off double the number of sceptics last November. Joining us now is Rick Nye, Director of Populus, which conducted the poll, and Professor Graciela Chichilnisky, designer of the carbon trading system, which is designed to limit emissions. Very good morning to both of you. Rick, could you just start us off with, what has changed? What are we seeing in terms of what are people thinking about climate change?
Well, the number of people who believe in man-made climate change has fallen from about 2 in 5 to 1 in 4 over the space of 3 months. And the number of people who don't believe that climate change is happening at all has almost doubled from 15% to 25% over the same time.
Now, if you were looking at any subject, that kind of change would be a dramatic change, wouldn't it?
It's a big shift, and it coincides with a number of things. It coincides with the row over the climate change data. It coincides with a very sharp winter here in Britain, and it coincides with the Copenhagen summit as well.
Graciela, you're a very firm believer in man-made climate change. Why do you think so many people remain sceptical?
I'm not a firm believer in climate change. I think the science is uncertain, and I think people are right to have skepticism. And we need to examine the data. I'm a firm believer in examining the data.
Oh, I misunderstood. You don't believe in man-made climate change?
I believe there is a risk, a serious risk of man-made change or human-made change. I don't believe that we have the certainty, and we don't need certainty. We act when we face a risk, even if we are not sure it's going to happen. Think of yourself. Do you own fire insurance for your house?
And got smoke detectors.
Do you not? You have to be protected. Are you sure your house is going to burn? The probability that your house will burn is much higher than the 25% or even the 20% that are sure that there is man-made change. In other words, if you look at the risks, the potential risk of catastrophic climate change is very substantial, and the could be is enough to protect.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, Rick? Because one of the issues about this particular debate is you are reliant. We as ordinary punters are not climate change experts. Exactly. We can just see what we see with our own eyes in our back garden. Yeah. So you rely on evidence in a way that you do in certain areas. It applies, I suppose, to medicine, possibly to the same degree. But you rely on the evidence, and then when you see the stories emerging of arguments, of emails, and how things being approached by the professionals, that has an effect, doesn't it?
I think it does have an effect. I mean, people look to scientists as experts. And yeah, as a philosopher, Karl Popper once said, wrong science betrays itself in its craving to be right. And I think the problem with the whole leaked emails at UEA is that the research looks as though it's been politicised, and science has been diminished, and politics hasn't been helped.
Now, Graciela, I was talking to Ed Miliband, the Climate Change Secretary. He said that all the raw data should be put out into the public so that people can see with their own eyes what facts there are to say that the climate change is man-made. Isn't it also about how they process that data as well? We have
Absolutely.
to look at all the workings.
Yes,
to
let
make
me
our
give you
own
one.
minds up.
Absolutely. Let me give you one example of the complexity of the situation. If there was catastrophic climate change to occur, the consequence in the British Isles would be to turn around the Gulf Stream so that the Isles will be frozen. Right now, the warm, gentle weather in the British Isles is due to the Gulf Stream. And that's part of a conveyor belt of currents that go through the world that could easily turn around. So catastrophic climate change would mean freezing weather in the British Isles. And that would be catastrophic. However, people don't associate the catastrophic change and this huge volatility of storms with what they think is global warming. So it is complex. Putting the data out may not do the job, but I'm a serious believer in having openness and more research done. We need a lot of research, we need transparency, and I applaud the government for looking into it, and for the IPCC and the United Nations to do further research into it. We have to do it.
But it's nonetheless the case, isn't it, Rick? And you will know this now from the surveys you've done. If someone's got a really hard winter, as we've just had, the worst winter in 30 years, that just changes people's perspective entirely. In a way, it alienates the whole debate, because they think, well, come on. What?
If you can't trust the evidence of experts, then you trust the evidence of your own eyes. And you look out your window and you see it's snowing and it's tough to get into work, and you think, global warming? what global warming. I mean, I think the issue is if you want to mitigate the consequences of man-made climate change on whatever risk, yeah, you have to understand there's a real cost attached to that. There's a cost in terms of jobs, in terms of prices, in terms of income transfers to developing countries. And if politicians are going to be asking you to partake in that, then you've got to be sure that the research is right and that the politicians are telling you the truth.
But there are two things here, though, aren't there? There is the global warming is happening, i.e. we are seeing changes in our temperature, which could be cyclical, a lot of people would argue, or that it is man-made, which another section of the population argue. I mean, will people, you say, only put their hands in their pockets for energy-efficient measures if they know that climate change is somehow their responsibility?
But actually, from the economic point of view, and considering what the carbon market has achieved, there is a lot of profits to be made from a natural move towards renewables. Renewable energy is needed for a number of reasons, including national security, and including the fact that many believe that the fossil fuels have peaked in the supply. There is a lot of scarcity fears. As a result of that, shouldn't think of cost, should think of the possible profits. There is a lot of business profits to be made, and the energy industry knows it. They're getting ready, and I am not talking about solar energy, I'm talking about ExxonMobil.
OK, well, we'll have to leave it there for now. Rick, Graciela, thank you very much. That kind of brings us right back to Ed Miliband, where we began the conversation about that initiative that we were talking about earlier. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.